My name is Alara Sterling. I'm 26 years old, and my life is measured in landscapes. I see the world as a series of gardens, some wild and overgrown, some meticulously planned, others left to ruin. For the longest time, my own inner landscape felt like the latter. It began to heal on the day I finally acknowledged the poison in its roots, a poison that had culminated in my brother, Liam, breaking two of my ribs against the cold, unyielding marble of my parents' kitchen island. The physical agony was a sharp, blinding white, but the true wound was the silence that followed, the suffocating quiet my parents demanded to protect the family name. It was a doctor, a woman whose name I didn't even know that morning, who refused to let that silence take root. Her quiet stand on my behalf was the first seed of a new garden I never knew I could grow. Our family, the Sterlings, were not just residents of Port Blossom, we were woven into its very fabric. Port Blossom is one of those impossibly picturesque coastal towns in Northern California, where the scent of salt and eucalyptus mingles in the air, and historic Victorian homes sit like painted ladies gazing out at the Pacific. My father, Arthur Sterling, built his legacy here. Sterling Properties wasn't just a real estate firm, it was the architect of the town's modern face, developing luxury communities and restoring historic landmarks. My mother, Catherine, was the town's unofficial social curator, chairing the Heritage Society, organizing the annual Lighthouse Charity Gala, and ensuring the Sterling name was synonymous with grace and philanthropy. From the outside, we were the perfect portrait. We lived in a sprawling arts and crafts-style house on a cliff overlooking the ocean, a home my father had lovingly restored. Our lives were a curated collection of beautiful moments, sailing trips on summer weekends, wine-tasting excursions in Napa, and Christmas cards that looked like magazine spreads. But inside the house, the light didn't always reach the corners. My brother, Liam, 3 years my senior, was the sun around which our family system orbited. He was charismatic, handsome, and heir apparent to my father's empire. He also possessed a temper that my parents euphemistically called passion. When we were children, this passion manifested as my painstakingly constructed Lego castles being smashed to bits, or my watercolor sketchbooks being accidentally ruined by a spilled drink. Each time, I was told to be more understanding. Liam feels things so intensely, Alara, my mother would say, stroking my hair. It's part of what will make him a great leader. As we grew, his verbal barbs replaced his physical destructiveness. He'd mock my quiet nature, call my love for landscape design a cute little hobby, and belittle any achievement of mine that didn't fit the family mold. If I brought home an academic award, it was met with a pleasant nod. When Liam scraped through a business course at Stanford, a feat largely facilitated by my father's connections and a generous donation, a celebratory dinner was held at the town's most exclusive restaurant. I tried to be the daughter they wanted. I was quiet, I was compliant, I excelled in school. I earned a degree in landscape architecture from a prestigious university, a field my father tolerated because it was, at least, tangentially related to property and aesthetics. A garden adds value to a home, I suppose, he'd once conceded. My dream wasn't just to add value, it was to create spaces of peace and healing, places where people could breathe. It was a language I understood far better than the brittle, unspoken rules of my own family. My longing for their approval was a deep, persistent ache. It was why, after a few years of working for a firm in San Francisco, I agreed to come home. My father had offered me a position at Sterling Properties, designing the landscapes for his new developments. It was a chance to prove my worth on his terms, a chance, I foolishly hoped, to finally earn my place in the sun alongside Liam. The early days back were filled with familiar patterns. At family dinners, Liam would hold court with tales of his business triumphs, while my attempts to discuss my design concepts were often interrupted by my mother asking if I'd reconnected with any eligible bachelors from our high school class. The red flags were there, fluttering in the salt-laced breeze, but I chose to see them as celebratory banners for my homecoming. I was determined to make it work. I wanted, more than anything, to believe that our curated family portrait could be real. The night that shattered the illusion was meant to be a celebration of Liam's promotion to Chief Operating Officer. My mother had orchestrated the evening with her usual precision. The house was filled with the scent of roasted rosemary and my mother's signature lemon tart. The dining table was set with heirloom china and silver that gleamed in the candlelight. I arrived with a gift, an expensive bottle of single malt scotch for Liam, a purchase that stretched my budget but felt necessary for the performance of family harmony. The evening began with practiced grace. My father uncorked a vintage Cabernet, toasting Liam's success. "To my son," he said, his voice thick with pride. "Carrying the sterling legacy into the future. The company couldn't be in better hands." We all raised our glasses. I offered my own sincere congratulations. "The landscape plans for the Cypress Point project were just approved, thanks to your pushing them through the planning commission," I said, hoping to connect our professional worlds. "The clients are thrilled." Liam, already on his second scotch, gave a dismissive wave of his hand. "Of course they are. I know how to handle the commission. They were trying to saddle us with ridiculous native plant requirements." "Actually," I said gently, "I was the one who suggested the revised native plant palette. It's more sustainable and it's what got the environmental board to sign off." A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "Right. Well, I'm the one who closed the deal." The conversation moved on, but a subtle tension had been introduced. My mother, sensing it, quickly changed the subject to her upcoming charity auction. Liam continued to drink, his mood growing more expansive and his comments more pointed. He began complaining about his girlfriend, Maya, a lovely woman I genuinely liked. "She's been on my case about taking a trip to Costa Rica," he grumbled. "As if I have time to go sit in a jungle right now. She doesn't understand the pressure I'm under." "She just wants to spend time with you, dear," my mother soothed. "She adores you." "I saw Maya at the farmer's market last weekend," I offered, trying to be helpful. "She mentioned how proud she was of your promotion." Liam's eyes narrowed. "When was this? What else did you two talk about?" "Nothing much," I said, confused by his sudden intensity. "We just chatted for a few minutes. She was asking about the new drought-tolerant roses I'm using for the model home on Seaspray Lane." "So now you're talking to my girlfriend behind my back about my projects?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the comfortable ambience of the room. The table fell silent. My father studied his wine glass. "Liam, don't be ridiculous," I said, my cheeks flushing. "It was a 5-minute conversation about flowers." "She has a big mouth," he snapped. "Last month she told her sister that our family is a little intense. Can you believe the nerve?" "I'm sure she didn't mean it in a bad way," my mother interjected nervously, trying to smooth things over. But Liam was too far gone, fueled by alcohol and his own deep-seated insecurity. "And now you're encouraging her. The two of you, whispering in corners. You've always been like that, Alara. Quietly judging everyone." "That is not true," I said, my own frustration rising. "You're twisting a completely innocent conversation." "Am I?" he sneered, pushing his chair back. Miss Perfect Landscape Architect, with her perfect little drawings and her quiet superiority. "Liam, that's enough," my father said, his tone one of mild reproof, not real authority. Liam stood up, swaying slightly. "I need another drink." He stalked out of the dining room and toward the kitchen. An uncomfortable silence descended. My mother suggested we have dessert on the veranda. I volunteered to clear the plates, needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere and, foolishly, hoping to de-escalate the situation with Liam. I found him in the kitchen, splashing more scotch into his glass. "Liam, I'm sorry if I upset you," I said softly, placing the plates by the sink. He spun around, his eyes glinting with a familiar, dangerous light. "You're not sorry. You love this. You love trying to make me look bad." "That's not fair," I protested. "I was just trying to make conversation. I like Maya. I think she's good for you." "Stay out of my relationship," he seethed, taking a step toward me. "And stop pretending you're so innocent. You've been jealous of me your whole life. Jealous that Dad trusts me with the company, that Mom dotes on me. You're just a glorified gardener, and you can't stand it." His words were so far from the truth, such a grotesque distortion of our reality, that I couldn't help but let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Jealous of you? Liam, are you serious? That laugh was the spark. His face contorted with a rage that seemed to eclipse everything else in the room. Don't you laugh at me. Before I could even process his words, he shoved me. Hard. My body flew backward, and the base of my spine slammed into the sharp edge of the marble island. The impact stole my breath. A sickening, cracking sensation shot through my left side, followed by an explosion of pain so intense it made me see stars. I crumpled to the floor, gasping, unable to draw a full breath. My parents rushed in, drawn by the crash. My mother let out a small, horrified gasp. My father froze in the doorway. What in God's name happened? He demanded. She slipped, Liam said instantly, his voice a little too loud. The floor is wet. She tripped. I tried to speak, to correct him, but each attempt to inhale was a fresh wave of agony. He pushed. I finally managed to gasp out, clutching my side. My father's gaze shifted from me on the floor to Liam, a flicker of something, disappointment? Anger in his eyes. What did you do? He hissed. Nothing. She's being dramatic, Liam insisted, but his bravado was starting to fray. My mother knelt beside me, her hands fluttering uselessly. Alara, honey, can you get up? Her expression was a chaotic mix of concern and rapid calculation. I'm sure it was an accident. Liam would never hurt you on purpose. But he had. And it wasn't the first time he'd been rough, just the first time a bone had broken. I need a hospital, I whispered, the pain a jagged knife in my ribs. Let's not overreact, my father said, his voice regaining its usual authoritative calm. Let's get you home. Take some painkillers. We'll see how you are in the morning. I stared at him, bewildered. I was a landscape architect, not a doctor, but I knew this was more than a bruise. I think my ribs are broken. It hurts to breathe. I'll drive you, my mother offered, but I shook my head. The thought of being trapped in a car with her placating words and her denial, was unbearable. I can drive myself. With my father's reluctant help, I struggled to my feet, biting back a cry of pain. These things happen in families, Alara, he said quietly as he helped me to the door. Let's not make a mountain out of a molehill. I didn't answer. As I walked away, I heard him turn on Liam, his voice a low, furious whisper. The drive to my small cottage by the marina was a blur of pain. Every turn, every bump in the road, sent spasms through my torso. I should have gone straight to the emergency room, but I was in shock, my mind reeling not just from the violence, but from my parents' chillingly familiar response. I stumbled inside, propped myself up in an armchair with pillows, and spent the night drifting in and out of a shallow, pain-filled sleep, each breath a reminder of the crack in our family's perfect facade. The next morning, the physical pain was eclipsed only by the emotional assault. My phone began ringing at 7 a.m. It was my mother. I ignored the first call, but she was persistent. Alara, darling, how are you feeling? Her voice was breezy, as if she were inquiring about a common cold. Not good, Mom, I said, my voice hoarse. I'm in a lot of pain. I can't move without it being excruciating. Oh, these things are always worse the next day, she said dismissively. Just take some ibuprofen and rest. Now, about last night. I think my ribs are broken, I cut in, needing her to understand the reality. Liam seriously hurt me. There was a beat of silence. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted to the careful, placating tone she used when I was being difficult. Sweetheart, it was an unfortunate accident. Let's not blow things out of proportion. Liam feels absolutely terrible about it. Has he called to say that? I asked, already knowing the answer. He will. He's very shaken up. But right now, Alara, we need to be practical. Your father, and I think it's best for everyone if we just handle this within the family. I shifted in my armchair, wincing. Handle what? Mom, I need to see a doctor. Alara. The warning tone was unmistakable. Think about what that entails. There will be questions, forms, records. It becomes public. Is that really necessary for what was just a family squabble that got out of hand? The audacity of her request left me speechless. Are you asking me not to get medical care because it might look bad for Liam? I'm asking you to think about the bigger picture, she said, her voice strained. Your father's business, our family's reputation in this town. Liam is the future of Sterling Properties. A public scandal could do irreparable damage. A misunderstanding? He shoved me into a marble counter, Mom. That's assault. Don't use that word, she hissed. He had too much to drink. He made a mistake. That's what family is for, to forgive mistakes. Before I could argue further, my father took the phone. His voice was all business. Alara, your mother tells me you're considering going to a doctor. I think that's an overreaction. There's nothing they can do for broken ribs anyway besides tell you to rest. They can take an x-ray to make sure a lung hasn't been punctured, I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of pain and rage. And what, exactly, do you plan to tell them happened? He asked, getting to the heart of the matter. The truth. A long, heavy sigh came through the phone. I need you to think very, very carefully, Alara. Liam has his entire future ahead of him. You wouldn't want to be responsible for derailing that over one heated moment, would you? The conversation was a masterclass in manipulation, cycling through guilt, veiled threats, and appeals to a family loyalty I was beginning to realize only flowed in one direction. An hour later, a courier delivered an opulent gift basket filled with designer bath oils, gourmet chocolates, a cashmere blanket, and a high-end heating pad. The card, in my mother's elegant script, read, "Hoping this helps you feel better. We love you. Family is everything." It felt less like a gift and more like a bribe. Liam finally called that afternoon. "Hey," he mumbled. "Mom said I should call. Not an apology. A chore." And? I prompted. "Look, things got out of hand. I'd had a lot to drink." "You broke my ribs, Liam." "Come on, I barely touched you," he protested, instantly defensive. "You're so dramatic. You probably just bruised them when you tripped." The gaslighting was so profound, so complete, I felt a dizzying sense of unreality. "I didn't trip. You shoved me." "Whatever. Look, are you going to make a big deal out of this or not? Mom and Dad are freaking out. I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon, Liam." "Don't be an idiot, Alara," he snapped, his faux contrition vanishing. "You'll regret it if you drag the family through the mud for this." I hung up, my hand trembling. I called my friend Chloe, a high school teacher who had seen through the Sterling family's polished veneer years ago. When I told her what happened, her reaction was the one I had craved from my own family. "Oh my God, Alara. That's horrific. I'm coming over right now. I'm taking you to the doctor. You shouldn't be alone." Her immediate, unquestioning belief was a balm to my shattered spirit. As Chloe drove me to the clinic on the far side of town, my phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from my parents. But with every mile that separated me from them, a small, fragile sense of resolve began to form. This was not normal. This was not okay. And for the first time in my life, I was not going to prune my own needs to preserve the family's pristine image. The clinic was a modest, modern building, a world away from the opulent settings of my family's life. Chloe helped me inside, her arm a steady support. The doctor I was scheduled to see was a Dr. Anjali Sharma. When she entered the exam room, she had kind, intelligent eyes and a calm, direct manner that immediately put me at ease. "Miss Sterling," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Sharma. I understand you've had a fall." The euphemism I had given the receptionist hung in the air. This was the moment of truth. "I didn't fall," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "I was pushed by my brother. I hit a counter." Dr. Sharma's expression didn't change, but her gaze sharpened with focus. "I see. Let's take a look." Her examination was gentle and thorough. She noted the vast, dark bruise blooming across my side and listened carefully to my breathing. "I'm ordering an x-ray," she said. "Based on the tenderness and the sound of your breathing, I suspect at least 2 fractured ribs. I'm also concerned about potential complications." She was right. The x-ray revealed 2 clean fractures and 1 displaced fracture of the 7th rib. When Dr. Sharma returned with the results, her demeanor was serious. "Alara," she said, sitting opposite me, "these are significant injuries. The displaced rib needs to be monitored closely. It's dangerously close to your lung. We need to talk more about how this happened." The dam inside me broke. Under her compassionate, professional gaze, the whole story came pouring out. The dinner, Liam's rage, my parents' cover-up, the gift basket, the threatening phone calls. I told her everything, the words tumbling out in a rush of pain and confusion. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she put down her pen. Ilara, what you've described is domestic violence. As a physician in this state, I am a mandatory reporter. Panic seized me. What does that mean? It means I am legally and ethically obligated to file a report with the police about the nature and cause of your injuries, she explained gently. No, you can't, I pleaded, the old instinct to protect the family kicking in. You don't understand. My father. I understand that you're in a very difficult and frightening position, she said, her voice softening. But I want you to consider something. If a client came to you, their garden poisoned at the root, would you advise them to just plant more flowers on top and pretend everything is fine? Or would you tell them they have to deal with the source of the poison, even if it's difficult and messy, so that something healthy can grow again? The metaphor, so perfectly tailored to my world, struck me with the force of a physical blow. This will not be easy, she continued. Your family will likely react exactly as you fear. But you are not responsible for their reactions. You are only responsible for your own safety and well-being. By filing this report, I am not just fulfilling a legal duty. I am standing with you and affirming that what happened to you is not okay. You have the right to be safe. She then told me a little about her own past, a story of a family that prized silence over safety and the long, difficult road she'd traveled to find her own voice. Her vulnerability was a gift, a bridge across the chasm of my fear. I sat in silence for a long moment, the world tilting on its axis. All my life, I had been taught to be the caretaker of the family's garden, to trim my own branches so as not to cast a shadow on Liam. But my garden was dying. Okay, I whispered, the single word feeling like the heaviest thing I had ever lifted. Do what you have to do. A profound look of relief and respect crossed her face. You are making the right choice, Ilara. Not the easy one, but the right one. As Chloe drove me to her house afterward, I felt a terrifying and exhilarating sense of freedom. I had no idea what storm was about to break, but for the first time, I wasn't running for cover. I was standing in the open, ready to face the rain. The storm broke with the force of a hurricane. Within hours of the police contacting my family, my phone became a weapon against me. My father's voicemail was glacial with fury. I cannot believe you would betray your own brother, this family. After everything we have given you. My mother's was a tearful torrent of guilt. How could you, Ilara? You've broken my heart. You're destroying us. Liam's text was blunt. You're dead to me. I turned off my phone and curled up in Chloe's guest room, letting the waves of grief and fear wash over me. How had I become the villain? Because you stopped playing your part in their story, Chloe said, sitting on the edge of the bed with a cup of tea for me. You're trying to write your own. That terrifies them. The following weeks were a trial by fire. The pressure from my family was relentless. They enlisted relatives to call and lecture me about loyalty and forgiveness. My father's lawyer sent a formal letter offering to cover all my medical expenses and provide a generous stipend for my emotional distress if I would recant my statement. It was hush money, plain and simple. But something new was growing in the space my fear used to occupy, resolve. Dr. Sharma had connected me with a therapist, Sarah, who specialized in family trauma. They are trying to pull you back into the dysfunctional system, Sarah explained. Your healing is a threat to their denial. I also took a courageous step and called my Aunt Isabel, my mother's estranged younger sister. She had been exiled from the family years ago for reasons that were always kept vague. When I told her my story, she wasn't surprised. Oh, honey, she sighed over the phone. I'm so sorry. I saw this in Liam when he was just a boy. I tried to talk to your mother about it, and she accused me of being jealous of her perfect family. That's when they cut me out. Her validation was like water on parched earth. We met for coffee, and for the first time, I felt a sense of family that wasn't conditional. With the support of Chloe, Sarah, and Isabel, I began the slow, arduous work of building a new life. I changed the locks on my cottage. I took a leave of absence from Sterling Properties, knowing I could never go back. I started looking for a new job. Most importantly, I rediscovered my art. I bought a new set of watercolors and filled sketchbooks with images of the coastline, resilient cypress trees clinging to cliffs, wildflowers pushing up through cracked rock. My art became my therapy, my way of processing the pain and finding beauty in the broken places. The legal process moved slowly. Kyle was charged with misdemeanor assault. My parents hired the best defense attorney in the county, who tried to paint me as an unstable, vindictive liar. The thought of a trial, of having to testify against my own brother, was daunting. But every therapy session, every conversation with Chloe and Isabel, every stroke of my paintbrush strengthened my resolve. The climax came not in a courtroom, but in a therapist's office. After months of silence, my parents requested a reconciliation meeting. I agreed, but on my terms. It would be with my therapist, Sarah, present. They arrived looking like they were attending a funeral, somber, dressed in expensive, muted tones. Liam slouched in his chair, radiating resentment. They spoke of forgiveness, of moving on, of letting bygones be bygones. "We miss you, Alara," my mother said, her eyes welling with tears. "We just want our family back." "I want a family too, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "But I want a healthy one. One where I'm not expected to be silent about being harmed. I need to hear you acknowledge what happened. Not the unfortunate incident, but the truth. Liam assaulted me, and you both tried to cover it up." My father stiffened. "This is about your refusal to forgive. Family is supposed to forgive." "Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen," I said, quoting something Sarah had taught me. "Accountability has to come first." And I have never once heard Liam give a true, accountable apology. All eyes turned to my brother. He shrugged, looking at the floor. "I said I was sorry." "You said you were sorry things got out of hand," I corrected gently. "You've never said, 'I'm sorry I lost control and hurt you.' What I did was wrong, and it won't happen again." "There's a difference." The room was silent. In that silence, I found my answer. They were incapable of the kind of change I needed. They wanted me back, but only if I was willing to return to my designated role in their broken system. I stood up. "I love you all," I said, and the words were still true, in their own complicated way. "But I can't be part of this anymore. Not like this." I walked out of that office not with anger, but with a profound and quiet sense of peace. I was leaving the ruined garden behind. It's been a year since that day. Liam took a plea bargain, probation, and mandatory anger management. I have minimal, carefully boundaried contact with my parents. It's a sad, aching distance, but it's a healthy one. My life, however, is anything but sad. I started my own landscape design firm, specializing in creating therapeutic and restorative gardens. My business is small, but it's growing, nourished by passion and purpose. I live in a new town a few hours down the coast, a place where I am not a Sterling, but simply a Lara. My chosen family, Chloe and Isabel, and my friends from a survivors support group are the sturdy, life-giving trees in my new landscape. Sometimes, when I'm working in a garden, my hands in the rich soil, I think about the poison that once ran through my own roots. I know that healing is not a destination, but a lifelong process of tending, weeding, and nurturing. There are scars, but scars are a sign of healing, not of brokenness. I am building a life that is authentic and true, a garden where I can finally, truly breathe. And it is more beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined.